Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you. I've got some opening remarks. The public meeting is heard by the City Council Planning Advisory Committee, and public notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The non-elected members of the Planning Advisory Committee are Mr. John Baltutis, Mr. David Joyce, Ms. Catherine Brown, and Mr. Paul Jennings. Citizen appointees may ask questions, participate in the discussion in order to assist in making recommendations to City Council, but may not make motions or vote in any connection with the public meeting. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Planning Committee or City Council before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of City Council or the local planning appeal board. If a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Comments received at this public meeting as well as written comments will be considered by the Engineering Development Services Department in analysis of the applications that were part of the public meeting tonight. A recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments in a future meeting. Any persons wishing to be advised of the Belleville Planning Advisory Committee's recommendations with respect to today's applications are requested to leave their name and address on the appropriate notification sheet located at the clipboard beside the podium. And for attendance, I see all councillors are present. Any disclosure of pecuniary interests and general nature thereof? Seeing none, public meeting 3.1, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 41 Casey Road, former township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings. File number B-77-1089. Applicant owner is David Putman and Beth Putman. Agent is Keith Watson from Watson Land Surveyors Limited. Point to staff.
So the applicant proposes to rezone a portion of the subject lands from prime agriculture zone to rural residential zone as a condition of consent for applications B13 and B1419. The lands are designated industrial in the city's official plan. More specifically, the land is within the special policy area known as the Canifton Planning Area. Historically, severances of land have been supported according to the policies related to the rural land use designation in the current official plan. And comments received at this public meeting, as well as subsequent written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the application received to amend the City of Belleville zoning bylaw, and a recommendation will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? You come forward and activate the microphone. State your name.
My name is Keith Watson. I'm acting as agent, and I'm here with Dave Putman. We agree to everything as far as the rezoning goes, but now that I am here in front of this committee, I just wondered if I could ask a question on one of the statements made in the planner's review.
Sure, go ahead.
On page 13, he mentions that this subject lands are part of a property that's being considered to exchange through from developable lands to prime agricultural land. We have written a letter to the clerk, and hopefully he's passed it on to the planner, just to say that we would like the planning committee to look at that a little more closely rather than taking all the land that was currently industrial and switching it to prime ag, only to make the city's land that they've expropriated industrial in its place. We feel that that's something you should consider, that keeping it industrial rather than taking our industrial land, wiping it out so we can't develop it, and then having the city's land that you've expropriated come in its place. Also, another thing is there's been a design or an attempt to put an interchange in the property, which is or in that area, which is right in the middle of this land that you're going to take out of industrial use, and we're hoping that you could reconsider or think of a way of rezoning it not to prime ag, but something in between prime ag and industrial that would allow development of those properties that are north of the 401 that have been industrial for 40 years.
go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, have received your comment and some other landowners in the area's comments. They're part of the official plan review, so
Yes.
they'll be addressed. Staff is
Okay.
working or suggesting alternatives as well to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Okay.
So I know that email was sent by Jennifer in your office on your behalf.
It was sent through her computer, but I was the one that signed it. You know.
Oh, okay, so I did acknowledge her when she came into the planning office that I received it, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and again, I know this format isn't to review the official plan, but I just wanted to bring that forward, that there's 4 or 5 owners that are very concerned that their property's going to be taken out of developable land and put into prime ag, which it's right along the 37 corridor and right where the Cloverleaf is going to be built, so why would you take it out of a developable potential and turn it into prime ag?
Yeah.
That's all.
So, sorry if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to follow up too, yeah, we did provide sort of an overlay of that, I guess, access route as well, overlaid on those lands to the ministry as well, it's just to notify them that.
And that design for that Cloverleaf, as everyone knows, has been going on for 40 years. You know, maybe we're right at the point where it's going to happen, and then why not have light industrial or dry industrial lands available north of the 401? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Just before you go, I'll just ask, is there any questions from committee members? No? Okay, no, thank you, Mr. Watson.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? And finally, a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none, can I get a motion to refer this? Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor? Motion is carried. 3.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5027 Old Highway 2, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1090. Applicant owner is Jane Ann Booma, and I'll ask staff to introduce the application.
Okay, so the applicant proposes to rezone a portion of the subject lands from rural zone and hazard zone to rural residential zone as condition of consent for applications B1919 and B2019. So the hazard zone that's currently on this property is intended to protect hazardous or environmentally significant areas regulated by Quinte Conservation. Quinte Conservation has indicated through the consent application process they have no concerns with this land being rezoned to rural residential zone. So the land is designated rural in the city's official plan, and policies provide for limited residential development. And comments received at this public meeting, as well as subsequent written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the application received to amend the City of Belleville zoning bylaw, and a recommendation will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments.
Thank you. Is anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application?
My name is Willem Bauma, and my wife Jane Bauma is the owner, and we're both here where we have nothing to add to the application, but we are here, of course, to speak in favor in case there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to ask any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? And finally, a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none, and a motion to refer. Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Motion is carried. 3.3, notice of complete application, introductory public meeting for extension temporary use bylaw 209 Canafton Road North, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1091. Applicant is Adam Holgate. Owner is Holgate Tire and Battery, John Holgate. Mr. Asher.
So the applicant is requesting council consider an extension of a temporary use bylaw for a period of 2 years to permit 2 storage trailers on the subject lands. The applicant has indicated these trailers store material for the operation of Holgate Tire, which is located on the adjacent property. So while storage trailers are permitted on commercial properties, they are only permitted as an accessory use, and the property doesn't contain a main use, and the trailers wouldn't be considered as accessory. And so that's why he is coming forward to ask for extension of the temporary use bylaw. The applicant has indicated that they've had difficulty removing the trailers within the time frame they originally were granted of 1 year, so they are asking for an extension. The applicant has also discussed with planning staff the need for this prior to redeveloping the lands. Any redevelopment would have to comply with zoning bylaw and site plan requirements. And once again, comments received at the public meeting as well as subsequent written comments will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the application for extension to the temporary use bylaw, and a recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application?
I'm Adam Holgate. I also don't have anything to add, but I am available for questions if anybody happens to have any.
Is there anyone wanting to ask any questions? Mr. Jennings?
You said there was difficulty in removing them? Could you explain that, please?
Sure. So the property as it sets, Holgate Tire and Battery sits on its own lot. The corner is its own separate lot. That's what causes the issue with having the storage trailers there. The original thought a year ago was to move the trailers onto the Holgate Tire property. When we investigated that, there is some concerns of the structural integrity of the trailers if we did go to move them. They've been sitting there for coming on probably 12 years now without being moved. So they may actually come apart if we did hook on them and just tried to pull them over onto my yard on the Holgate Tire property. And upon some further thinking, just purely moving those trailers onto the Holgate Tire property wouldn't really improve the appearance of the area, which was kind of where some of the complaints started at the beginning. So we've switched directions, and we're hopeful to build a standalone building on that corner, which I've been in some discussions with planning about, but that would be something that would happen, not immediately, but probably 2020.
Thank you. So what have you been doing to make the site look better? If that was the complaints.
So, yeah, so city bylaws, I guess, stopped saying that it needed to be improved. So we've just kind of continued with some of their direction, which is more focused towards the Holgate Tire property than the corner lot property, which is basically keeping the scrap tires out of the way. But part of the reasoning behind having that corner cleaner is just the fact that that whole area is moving more from an industrial area to an industrial residential area. So the improvements that I want to make on the property as a whole, I think would be more reflective of that than just simply moving the trailers onto my property, which I think would still be probably an eyesore in a lot of people's minds in the neighborhood.
Okay. Councillor Sanderson, I see your hand. Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Holgate. So what is currently stored in that trailer?
My winter steel rims. I bring a bulk order in of steel rims for people that are putting winter tires on them and then on their vehicles, and they go in those trailers.
Okay, so those rims haven't been in there for a year. You're cycling them through?
To some extent, yes. There is always some stock that's carried from 1 year to the next. But yeah, there would be certainly an ebb and a flow of what's in those trailers.
And the last question, and I'm not sure it's fair, but if there was a temporary of 1 year to allow you to make alternate arrangements, so temporary in my mind is 30, 60, or 90 days. So I have some difficulty personally thinking about a 2-year extension as being temporary. That's not temporary. Even the 1 year, in my mind, wasn't temporary. And I don't think it's acceptable that the corrective action hasn't already occurred. So those are my point of views.
Sure, that seems fair enough. A year ago, when I originally made the application to rezone that corner and get the temporary use injunction, the time frame that was discussed at that point was a 2-year injunction, or a 2-year temporary use, and then at this meeting, it was brought forth to have it a 1 year with the opportunity to renew it after that, and that's kind of where we stand today.
Thank you.
Mr. Joyce?
Yeah, Councillor Sanderson addressed it. I was in the meeting when we discussed this a year ago, and I do remember the dialogue between 2 years and 1 year. So I guess I'm back to, would 1 year be sufficient? You mentioned 2020 is when you would like to do the, be ready or start the renovation. So if we did 1 year, I don't necessarily agree with the 30, 60, 90 as temporary. Usually something like this is usually in yearly increments, from my experience anyways. Would you accept a 1 year as a proposal?
Well, yeah, so if the options were accept a 1 year or have to move them tomorrow, and then absolutely I'd accept a 1 year. The small thorn in my craw is that last year it was basically, I thought predetermined it was going to be a 2-year temporary use. And then, like I say, the 1 year plus a year was introduced to me at this meeting, to which I think maybe I naively agreed to, figuring, hey, 1 year plus 1 year is the same as 2 years, except for $1,750 is the difference between that 1 year plus 1 year as opposed to 2 years, because it did require another application to get it extended again. And if I rewind again a year ago, the conversations were that, I would maybe build a permanent storage facility on that property. Now, somewhat unfortunately, from talking to planning, I find out that I would not be allowed to simply build a permanent storage facility on that building or on that lot without again applying to get it rezoned again, which is going to be another, I don't even know what the cost of that is, but so. Would I accept a 1 year? Sure. Am I a little bit hesitant to say, let's go back to a year and maybe lock myself into another application should things go awry? I'd rather not, but it's ultimately your guys' decision, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a follow-up question, excuse me. So then, through the chair to staff, can we make it happen, the zoning and all those other changes that he's suggesting, so we're not the roadblock to the 1 year, 2 year, or is this going to be a problem then, and so we will be back a year from now with the same issue? Can this be resolved?
Go ahead.
I guess that's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, it would call for how, if, I think Mr. Holgate has a busy tire business, and so he's probably got a lot of things on his plate. So in my perspective, I would think that 2 years would be more beneficial. That would allow him to do design and have his approvals in place, and then allow for the construction as well. Because the construction itself isn't something you can line up overnight as well. So I think it's a prominent location, but I think 2 years is probably a more realistic timeline, which would allow him to get all his plans in place, because it's also a location that's adjacent to the river and the environmental concerns with Quinte Conservation. There's a lot of layers involved, so I think 2 years would probably be more realistic to address having something in place as opposed to the temporary use.
Okay, I have Councillor Culhane next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I appreciate your frustration with the rules, and I'd like to support business, small business especially. I agree with my cohort somewhat, except that I don't agree with the 60/90. It depends on your background, I guess. I was tempted to make a motion for the 1 year, but given the circumstances that have been brought forward, if it's reasonable at this time, I'd make a motion for 2 if I have a seconder.
Well, what I would suggest is that the purpose of this meeting is to gather
Oh,
the
right, I'm in the
information.
wrong meeting, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
pardon me.
you're good, Councillor Culhane?
Yeah, I'm good,
All right.
thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Holgate, first of all, I want to thank you for your honesty. You did say it's an eyesore, and you're hoping to move forward and make it a little better. How long is, when I think of tires in this area, I think of Holgate Tires. How long has the family had the business?
60-plus years.
Wonderful. How many employees you have?
10.
So it's nonstop, and I see the trailer often when I pass, but, and I can see where the frustration is, as we're all learning tonight about rezoning, and I can see where that frustration plays in, but good luck, and appreciate your honesty, and like Councillor Culhane said, family-run business, 60 years, that says a lot, so thank you for coming.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Holgate.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? And finally, a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Can I get a motion to refer? Councillor Culhane, Councillor Sanderson, all in favor? Motion is carried. 3.4, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw number 10-245 for 656, 660, 664, and 670 Sydney Street, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1092. Owner is Belleville Community Developments Limited. Applicant is GCL Developments Limited. Agent is RFA Planning Consultant. Mr. Ashton.
Okay, so this application's for both an official plan amendment as well as a rezoning bylaw amendment. So in the official plan, the subject lands is designated commercial land use. The applicant requests a redesignation to residential land use. And while the applicant requests a rezoning of the subject lands from restricted industrial and highway commercial zone to residential 7th density zone with special provisions to permit 4 apartment buildings with a total of 96 dwelling units. So this is a very detailed application that has been submitted with a large number of supporting documents that were provided with the application, including a planning justification report, conceptual landscape plan, servicing brief, and traffic impact statement. So the lands under consideration for an official plan amendment are currently designated commercial and are located on the west side of Sydney Street. They are at the southern boundary of the Bell Boulevard commercial area, where this area extends south along Sydney Street. So these lands are directly adjacent to lands designated residential along Sydney Street. And with the request to redesignate the lands to residential, they would become a continuous part of the residential area along Sydney Street. So staff, through the planning report for this application, have also identified that this area is being considered for intensification opportunities through the current official plan review. And comments received at this public meeting, as well as subsequent written comments, will be considered by the Engineering and Development Services Department in analysis of the application received to amend the City of Belleville official plan and zoning bylaw. And a recommendation report will be brought forward upon receipt of all agency and public comments.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application?
Good evening, members of the Planning Advisory Committee. Sorry. Is this on? Yes, it is.
Yep.
Good evening, members of the Planning Advisory Committee, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this application. My name is Andy Gertzma. I'm the principal for GCL Developments. GCL is the party that's bringing forth this application on behalf of the current owner. And we're also being represented on this through our buyer engineer, Ainley, Caitlin Sheehan from Ainley Engineering is here with us, and Daniel Bedford from from RFA Planning is also here with us, as is Spencer Hutchison from RFA Planning. I've also asked our architect, Ralph Wildeboer from Wildeboer, Ralph Vandenberg from Vandenberg and Wildeboer Architects to join us and to talk about the architectural matters related to this application. So just a few brief comments about this. I know that you guys are anxious to get out to hear the debate later tonight, and as am I. First of all, the project is going to be designated as an active adult community. Active adult is a term that is applied to age-targeted communities. We can't do age-restricted communities here in Ontario anyway, so we target that through our marketing. And as a result, we've instructed the architect to design the units specifically for that demographic. Many active adults are looking for new homes to give them an increased freedom in home ownership. A new home that affords them the time and energy to focus on things that matter most to them. The proposed condo development at 656 to 670 Sydney Street has been designed to address the needs of this growing demographic. The proposed development is a lifestyle property that's designed with resident involvement and interaction in mind. It features a spacious community hub building and an extensively landscaped patio area and grounds. Condo residents will also enjoy numerous amenities located within walking distance, including parkland, transit, groceries, dairy, retail establishments, entertainment, health clubs, banking, and restaurants. The site is also located adjacent to a future multipurpose trail as proposed in the Transportation Master Plan. Everything necessary for a vibrant and active lifestyle. The new community features a 4-building mid-rise concept that promotes efficient construction phasing while offering opportunity to adjust unit sizes and amenities offered in subsequent phases based on market demand. Most of the units feature windows on 2 sides because of the 4-building site layout. Phase 1 has been designed with unit sizes ranging from 645 square feet to 1,200 square feet. And that's going to give us the opportunity to offer a range of pricing based on where the market is. Residents will be able to select from a variety of upscale interior designs with options of either underground or surface parking. Professional condominium management will ensure the environment is well maintained. GCL Developments has more than 30 years of experience in the development of numerous subdivisions and condominium projects in Belleville, Quinte West, Kingston, and Peterborough. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Daniel Bedford from RFA Planning to cover off the planning aspects of our application.
Okay.
Okay, good evening. I'm not going to give any introductions because Andy has already done that, but again, my name is Daniel Bedford, and here we go. So the subject property consists of 4 properties municipally known as 656, 660, 664, and 670 Sydney Street. These properties front onto Sydney Street halfway between Tracy Park Drive and Bell Boulevard in Belleville. On the 3 southern parcels are older single detached dwellings, while the northern parcel is currently vacant and has never been developed. And before I distributed all the presentations, so feel free to follow along with the paper copy or the electronic copy as well. As shown on the air photo of the local area, to the immediate north of the subject property is a property zoned and used for commercial uses. Further to the north is the commercial corridor along Bell Boulevard. The southern portion of the property abuts an existing hydro easement that accommodates transmission lines. To the south of the hydro easement is a walk-up apartment building. To the west is open, undeveloped land zoned for restricted industrial uses. To the east, across Sydney Street, are 2 large blocks of vacant land, one approved for a residential subdivision and one earmarked for commercial uses as a plaza or large format store. So briefly, I will take you around the site as it stands today. The next couple of slides show a series of photos from various perspectives. On this first slide, we are looking directly into the subject lands. On the first two images, we are looking at the two most northern parcels, 670 and 664 Sydney Street, which occupy vacant land and a dwelling, respectively. The third image is of 660 Sydney Street and the current single detached dwelling and a shed in the rear. And the most southern parcel, 656 Sydney Street, is also shown on the bottom right-hand corner. On this slide, we are looking at the lands immediately surrounding the subject property. In the first image, you can see a portion of 656 Sydney Street on the far right of the image. It looks like you can see the white of the house. A hydro easement is located just south of 656 Sydney Street, and the transmission lines are also visible in this image. Further south, and in the next image, we can see an existing apartment building, and the third image is a view looking east from the subject lands at the vacant land and hydro corridor on the east side of Sydney Street. Lastly, and moving north of the site, we can see the existing commercial operation. And I will now turn it over to Ralph, who will speak to the site plan and additional concept drawings.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Vandenberg. We're architects for the project. And I must say that it's been a pleasure working with Andy on this project, because one of the first things he said, Ralph, he said, I need this to be a beautiful building. I need to be a beautiful development. He wanted the design to be something that was a little bit beyond the norm. And so that's music to an architect's ears. So we're very happy with what's been developed so far. I think what I'd like to do is move to the landscape plan right away. I think it's the easiest to talk about that first. Yeah, so as you can tell, there are 4 buildings. The front 2 buildings that face Sydney are 4-story, and the rear 2 buildings that are on the west side are 5-story. Now, what you'll notice that there's 2 access points, one on the north and one on the south, and then sort of a driveway that passes in between the buildings. The entryways to each one of the 4 blocks is directly off of that drive around. Now, you may notice that there isn't a lot of parking spaces that are shown on site, and that's a particular design in that about 2/3 of the required parking is all below each one of the buildings. So you notice there's a sloped ramp that goes down to access the parking that's below grade. The amount of landscaping that's there as a whole, it's just over 40%. In fact, it's 41% of the site is actually landscaping. So we're quite happy that that allowed us sufficient space to provide a nice row of trees along Sydney, trees around the perimeter, lots of landscaping you'll see in the courtyard that's in between the buildings. The smallest little square in the center of the courtyard, that's the 1-story amenity building that is open for all the residents in the development to use. You may also notice that the 4 corners of the building are balconies. And what that allows us to do is to offer nice private balconies. First of all, you don't have balconies that butt against other balconies, but they're separated from each other for privacy. But it also allows the corners of the building to be dissolved a little bit. They're not solid, massive corners of a building, and it helps to soften the appearance of the buildings, as well as provide privacy. You'll see that there's pathways throughout the project. You'll see there's a nice walkway around the west side on the north and south. So if someone who wants to go for a walk, they can do so, and with minimal interruptions with cars. That was an important thing. And so now if we, I guess maybe what I should mention is that a lot of times a 4 or 5-story residential building has a flat top on it, and with mechanical units that are on top. And so a real aesthetic gesture that we wanted to introduce was to have sloped roofs on there. And this is now permitted under the building code, where before it was quite a challenge to do a sloped roof with a 4 or 5 story building. We're now able to do it with wood frame, and I think it really benefits the aesthetics of the development. So maybe if we can flip forward to the 3D view. So there you can see the sloped roof that's there. And you'll also notice that what we've done is we try to create horizontal lines just to minimize the height of the building a little bit. So you notice there's a strong horizontal line at the base of the building, and that's the parking level. The parking level is actually half in the ground, just so that the ramps aren't, excuse me, aren't too long, that you're going down into a dark space, but they're actually just halfway down. You slope down about 4.5 feet or so. So that gray horizontal line that you'll see around the building is actually the foundation wall. Now, the entrance that you see there, because it's right at grade, because Andy, definitely wanted to have wheelchair access, into the building to the different levels for people who have challenge, walking or they're in a wheelchair or just have bad knees or whatever. It allowed us to, in this way, have a 1.5 story lobby. So when you come in, it's actually quite a nice lofty space, and each one of the buildings then has an elevator in it to get to each one of the units. You'll notice that the gray base, the foundation line that we have, is also brought up vertically at the entrance just to accentuate that a little bit. And then on the rest of the perimeter, it's dominantly brick clad. But what you will notice at the very top floor, we don't have any masonry there. In fact, we've given it a dark color and separated it from the masonry just so that it actually helps to float the roof off the building. Visually, it helps to bring down the height of the building, and it just happens to soften the top of the building as well. So we're quite happy with how it all is coming together. We have another picture as well, I think, of the courtyard, but it's in your package there. But I don't think we need to talk about it too much. It was in the early stages, and Andy just showed me here just when I arrived at the next meeting. I guess we're presenting a nice view at a lower level of the courtyard itself, so we can really show off what that space looks like.
This is the courtyard rendering. We received it right before the meeting, so it's on the screen if you want to take a quick look, just to get an idea of what Ralph was talking about in terms of the design and the layout for the courtyard. Okay. So the subject lands are designated commercial in the Belleville official plan, and the official plan also designates Sydney Street as an arterial road. It is proposed to redesignate the subject lands residential by means of an OPA to permit the 4 apartment buildings. As can be seen on the screen, the subject lands are located at a transition point between commercial lands and residential designated lands. So commercial to the north in red and residential to the south and slightly to the east in orange. As such, the subject lands are continuous with residentially designated lands, and the OPA in effect is a minor boundary adjustment. It is important to note the proposed development adheres to the policies for high density development in terms of built form and density. Other important aspects related to the development include that the 96 apartment units will assist in providing a mix of housing types and density within the immediate area. There is adequate capacity with the elementary and secondary school system to accommodate enrollment that would be generated from this development. The site is within walking distance to Parkland. Transit services are readily available to the site along Sydney Street, which again is an arterial road. An abundance of commercial uses and services exist along the Bell Boulevard corridor, which is within walking distance to the property. The site is located in the urban serviced area and therefore has access to a full range of services, including public roads, garbage collection, fire and police protection, transit services, parks and community facilities, academic institutions, and full water and sewer services. It is concluded that the proposed 96 apartment units conform to the high-density residential policies of the current City of Belleville official plan and also adheres to the policies being put forward in inclusion with the city's new OP. And so I'm just going to kind of take you around the area. And so there are different types of residential densities in the immediate vicinity. As noted earlier, the subject lands are located at a transition point between residential and commercial lands. And so we can see a few different low and medium residential uses. To the south of the subject lands is a walk-up apartment in the smaller yellow rectangle. To the southwest is a 7-building, 77-unit townhouse development. And directly across Sydney Street and slightly to the south on the right-hand side is the approved Holly Landing project, which will be developed for 51 freehold townhouse dwellings within 9 blocks. Thus, in the immediate vicinity of the subject lands are numerous forms and types of residential uses. Earlier this year, consultants for the city released a study that was a comprehensive review of land use in the urban serviced area of the municipality. Of particular interest when considering this current OPA was Figure 77, which is seen on the screen and on your paper. It is projected that for the period 2018 to 2038, that the municipality will have a surplus of 220 hectares of land for commercial uses. At the same time, it has been widely reported and acknowledged that there is a need for more housing in the city of Belleville. Thus, the proposed OPA, which involves removing 0.92 hectares of commercially designated lands, can be considered minor when considering a projected surplus of 220 hectares of commercially designated land. Positively, in its place would be 96 new apartment dwelling units for which there is significant demand. In part of updating the city's existing official plan, a technical brief on emerging policy issues was released by the city's planning consultant. Included within this brief was a discussion and recommendations on how to promote intensification in Belleville's updated official plan. Recommendation number 3 was to prepare a map of additional intensification areas, and what you're looking at on the screen or on the papers in front of you is the image of this map. The subject lands to this proposed OPA is one of the areas earmarked for intensification, and it can be seen outlined in a dashed red line near the subject property indicator. Clearly, this site has been recommended for intensification, and the proposal aligns and adheres to the recommendation. It is proposed to rezone the subject lands to a special R713 zone. The R7 zone permits for 1 or more apartment buildings. As shown in red, the special R713 zone would recognize 6 changes from the standard R7 zone regulations. These changes arise from the desire to intensify the residential use of the subject lands and to not compromise the final built form or impact the on-abutting properties. A detailed analysis of the special provisions is provided in the planning justification report that was submitted with this application. As previously mentioned, there would be above ground parking and surface below and above ground parking. Take a minute to just look at the chart. There's 44 parking spaces proposed with an additional 76 spaces beneath the buildings. 120 spaces are proposed, which meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The Ainley Group prepared a servicing review where it was determined that there is sufficient servicing capacity within the existing system to service the proposed development. Municipal water and sanitary services will service the subject lands. Services will connect to the existing services at Sydney Street. The stormwater plan will drain westward to a small facility along the western property line. And just finishing up, I'll summarize our planning opinion for the proposed official plan and zoning amendments. The subject property will be developed for 4 apartment buildings with a total of 96 apartment units. There will be a landscape courtyard and a community building for the shared use of residences. Access to the development will be via 2 driveways from Sydney Street. The Sydney Street apartments will provide an opportunity for an infill intensification and contribute towards a range of housing types available in the immediate area that is compatible with surrounding uses. The proposed use of the subject land is well buffered from nearby existing residential uses. There will be no impact on existing residences. The application for approval of an OPA and rezoning for this property is consistent with the PPS and the Belleville official plan. The proposal also adheres to the policies being put forward in the city's new official plan. And the application complies with the intent of the R7 zone and represents good planning. And thank you for your time this evening. And my colleagues and I are here to answer any questions that you may have related to this project. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Councillor Culhane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you for your excellent, well-detailed presentation. It's a beautiful project. Would you please explain to me phased condominium? What exactly does that mean?
The phased condominium. So as far as I'm concerned, aware from Andy, that it would be each residential unit would be owned by the purchaser.
So that in effect, there's no rental included in this project at all?
You want to answer that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So a phased condominium is a condominium where each building is brought into the overall condominium under a phased basis. So the first building would be phase 1 of the condo, and then each building will be brought in as the project develops. So that enables us to adjust the project as we go forward, based on what we feel is market demand, where the greatest demand is. And to your point about rental accommodation, frankly, we haven't really nailed which way we're going to go. We think we're going to do a combination of rental and owned condominium units, but we haven't done completed our research to know that we've definitively defined that. This would be if we do rental, it would be our first rental project. All the condominium projects we built in the past have been built direct and sold directly to individual owners.
Ma'am? Thank you, through you. Thank you, Mr. Gertrude. Of course, we're all concerned about the fact that there's nowhere to rent. That people can afford to rent. This is a beautiful project. When would we as a committee know whether there is any intent to rent any of these apartments?
In terms of the product and the deliverables, I can't answer those exact questions. That would be another question for the project leader and
down the
Andy,
road?
and for the developer.
Well, perhaps I can go through you to Mr. Gertrude.
I don't want to give the impression I'm trying to dodge the question, but we haven't really done enough research to know for sure which way we're going to go. I would say that by the time we bring the project in for site plan approval, which would be if this committee and subsequently council recommends our project for approval, then we would be completing detail engineering, and we would bring the project through for site plan approval. At that time, we would have a good handle on what the percentage would be for rental versus owned units. We may, as an example, decide to target specific buildings for rental only and specific buildings for purchase only. But again, those are things we're still wrestling with and trying to complete our research.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gertrude.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, through the chair. So I think it's a brilliant project. It's something that Belleville needs, and if we had 10 more of them, we'd be at our 1,000 number that we were so desperately looking for. My question, and I don't know if it's on everybody's mind, is if this gets the green light here, what do you see as the timeline for when the construction, I guess, or site plan would be ready, the build would start, and occupancy? Are you able to make a projection?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So we're anticipating being able to proceed full speed ahead on our engineering as soon as we have all of our approvals. That process is probably going to take, I'm guessing, 6 months. So once that process is completed, our plan would be to start with our building permit and site plan applications. So I would say at the earliest, we'd be looking at next fall.
Councillor
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a question for Mr. Gertzma. Actually, two questions. I was really impressed with the report that we had. It looks great. I just want to kind of, since you're here, I'll ask you. You're a builder, Mr. Gertzma. You have 2 buildings with 5 floors, 2 buildings with 4 floors, for a total of 96 units. Explain why one's 5, one's 4, just for my own knowledge and maybe for the others here. Instead of 4 or 5s. I'm just trying to figure out the mindset from a construction standpoint.
I guess aesthetics, really. We wanted to do a mix of unit sizes on the project. I don't think that's me. We wanted to do a mix of unit sizes and building types in the project. And through our discussion with the architect, we thought the aesthetics would look best at the 5 buildings, 5-story buildings in the back, and the 4-story buildings closer to the street.
Looks great. And the other one, and it's kind of a lighthearted question, but off the top, Mr. Gertzma, you said this would be an active adult community. That's the lifestyle. You said that's the term now, active adult. What is an active adult? You talked about the demographics, but you never gave us an age.
It's
Would it be older than you or younger than you?
It's actually, I was looking up the definition of active adult on Google there before I came up. Actually, active adult is defined as age targeted 55 plus.
55 plus, okay.
Yes.
So that's older than you then.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
A question for Mr. Gertzman, if I may. Immediately north to your property is the CAT, heavy machinery rental. I'm just curious as to what kind of buffering or landscaping you're going to be able to put in place that would reduce the amount of noise that people in the apartment buildings are going to experience from heavy machinery moving in there all day long.
Well, that's a good question, again. What we're planning to do there is build a 6-foot-high fence for starters. The windows on that unit will likely be upgraded to accommodate any additional sound that we may be experiencing. Aside from that, we don't have any other plans to address that.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Baltutis.
Thank you. This, again, looks like a great project. Everybody has made some great comments. For the architect, I'm just curious, where's the mechanical equipment going to go? You said that's why you're doing you didn't want to do a flat roof where most mechanical equipment would be, so
Yes.
where are you going to bury it or hide it?
In the lower level in the parking garage.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. There is some space on a typical floor on the inside for minor stuff that we have, electrical and small rooms, but
Yeah.
but the biggest unit is down in the parking level.
so all the apartments would be air conditioned, obviously?
Yep,
Oh,
yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, and to both of you, Mr. Gertzman, I think this is awesome. You know, we need more units, but we also need more mixed middle, which is really important. So regardless of the age, multiple units and finding ways that we can do intensification in the city and not just downtown, but Sydney and other areas. We're going to have further commercial use and hopefully see development in the north end of the city there around Bell Boulevard, et cetera. So that's really great. In terms of your phases, and Mr. Gertzman, I'll ask you, we've seen some other developments. Sometimes they start a phase, but they'll wait till there's so many units sold. Will this one be where you start it right away and then start the next one as soon as it's, say, 75%? Is that how you're going to do the phase, or it will be kind of like a 4-year development? How are you going to see that happening?
We've done, just to answer your question the long way, we've done a number of projects where we have gone through the pre-sale process. And sometimes that can take years, depending on how strong the market is. We've completed a project, one of the more recent projects that we completed. We discovered that by going ahead and building the building, we were able to sell it, even though we hadn't reached the pre-sale target. So that's one of the reasons why we're building the buildings with a smaller number of units. It enables us to start quite a bit quicker than we would if we had one large building on the project.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mr. Joyce?
Mr. Gertzma, excuse me, one other question. What is the, maybe I missed this, but what's the mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom in the units here? Maybe I missed that in the notes, but just approximately?
It's going to be 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units. Those are going to be the only 2 unit sizes we're offering. The mix in the first building, I'm guessing that there's probably about 25% of the units are the smaller units. As far as the actual mix, perhaps I can get Ralph to address that more accurately if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I'd have to analyze the plan. But yeah, as Andy said, most of them are 2-bedroom.
Okay.
In one of the buildings, there's even a 2-bedroom plus a den. But what I should make note that 15% of the units will actually be accessible units under the terms of the building code. What that means basically is that a wheelchair person can, the doors are wider and there's a larger bathroom and they can get into the kitchen, the bedroom, and that sort of thing. So,
I see. Okay, thank you, excellent.
Any other questions or comments? No? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? I'm thinking that's it with the whole team here. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? And finally, a third time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none, can I get a motion to refer? Councillor Culhane, Councillor Williams, all in favor? Motion's carried. I need a motion to adjourn this portion. Councillor Culhane, Councillor Sandison, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, moving on to the Plan Advisory Committee. Tenants, I see everyone is here. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, a confirmation of the minutes of the City Council Planning Committee meeting and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on September 3rd, 2019. Mr. Baltutis, Mr. Joyce, all in favor? Motion's carried. No deputations, no correspondence. Okay. Referrals from public meeting. 6.1, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 41 Casey Road, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1089. Applicant owner is David Putman and Beth Putman. Agent is Keith Watson, Watson Land Surveyors Limited. Principal Planners Report Number PP-2019-65. Resolution reads that report number PP-2019-65 dated October 7, 2019 regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting, application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 41 Casey Road, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, be received as information, and the staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Moved by Ms. Brown, seconded by Councillor Sandison. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. 6.2, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5027 Old Highway 2, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1090. Applicant owner is Jane Ann Buma. Principal Planners Report number PP-2019-66. Resolution reads that report number PP-2019-66 dated October 7, 2019 regarding regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting application for proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5027 Old Highway 2, Warmer Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering Development Services Department. Moved by Mr. Joyce, seconded by Councillor Culhane. All in favor? Motion's carried. 6.3, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for extension of temporary use bylaw 209 Canafton Road North, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1091. Applicant is Adam Holgate. Owner is Holgate Tire and Battery, John Holgate. Principal Planners Report number PP-2019-67. Resolution reads that report number PP-2019-67 dated October 7, 2019 regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for application for extension to temporary use bylaw 209 Canafton Road North, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Any questions or comments? Ms. Brown.
Through you, Mr. Chair, probably to Stephen, I'm just curious. We've had a year. We know that this is contentious in terms of how the residents are responding to the trailers and the tires, surplus tires on the property. I'm just curious at what stage we are at in terms of a determination on what can be built on the property and whether or not it's actually going to take 2 years.
Mr. Ashton.
So we usually have a development review team process now that we've instituted. I know we've had some initial conversations with Mr. Holgate. I think he's probably going to be preparing maybe a conceptual site plan to come forward. So I would hope to maybe over the next couple of months to see that. Although I know that this is going into his busy season, but hopefully we'll be able to kind of do a review. It is council's final decision on whether it be, the length of time or whether, the temporary use bylaw be extended. But just in my experience, if council wanted to consider a process where Mr. Holgate had the opportunity to develop a site plan and go through that, as I said, he's not, that's not his main occupation. His occupation is tires. 2 years would be realistic for him to accomplish that. But I'm also giving those comments that at the end of the day, it is council's final decision of the length of time that they would like to see for the extension.
Yep, go ahead.
I'd just like to express my concerns. I know through the municipal campaign in 2018, that particular area, this was a grievance that I heard often, and I'm sure many of us heard often, about the trailers and the tires on site. So I'm concerned that we're here a year later, and it appears that only initial conversations have occurred with the city, and I'm interpreting from what Mr. Ashton has shared. I feel that offering another 2 years without any assurance that there will actually be something achieved at the end of it would be very disconcerting to the residents in Canniff Mills and the surrounding area. So at this stage, my inclination is to not support a 2-year extension.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, through the chair. So I think Mr. Holgate made the comment that the trailer wasn't holding up as well as he had thought. And so if it's in a state of disrepair now, chances are it's not going to last 2 years. So I made the comment about temporary, meaning for me 30, 60, 90. And I understand that in a planning environment, a longer time frame is probably more appropriate. However, I'm of the same concern as Ms. Brown in that, 2 years from now, does Mr. Holgate come back and ask for yet another extension? So I won't be supporting the 2-year extension, and I would only support an extension if there were some commitment to actually get some work done. So, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Just sort of as a suggestion, staff, we don't have to bring back a recommendation report next month, but perhaps I can contact Mr. Holgate and we can maybe discuss developing a conceptual site plan in the meantime, and so that could be part of the final recommendation report to make sure that council has some comfort level, if that is good. Okay.
No, that would be fine, yeah.
Councilor Culhane, you have anything further, or?
No, I think that certainly answers my question, and if I need to, I'll withdraw my erroneous motion.
Any other comments? Mr. Joyce?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify Councillor Sanderson's comment. I think the remarks in regards to the trailers and their status was only if they were being moved, not so much in the static position. Not that they're not going to age another 2 years, but having been in the business for a number of years, they do last a long time, but I understand the concern is physically moving the trailers on the site was what the concern was, not so much the trailers in the current place. So just as a clarification to that comment. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? All in favor? Can I see the hands all at once here? Carried. 6.4, notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to official plan and zoning bylaw number 10-245 for 656, 660, 664, and 670 Sydney Street, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1092. Owner is Belleville Community Developments Limited. Applicant is GCL Developments Limited, and agent is RFA Planning Consultant Incorporated. Resolution, or Manager of Policy Planning's report number PP-2019-68. Resolution that the report number PP-2019-68 dated October 7th, 2019 regarding notice of complete application and introductory public meeting for proposed amendment to official plan and zoning bylaw number 10-245 at 656, 660, 664, 670 Sydney Street, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Any questions or comments? Mr. Baltutis.
Thank you. To the staff, on the site drawings, they're showing the stormwater was going to the west to a swale of some. Is there a stormwater management there now?
There is a stormwater management plan. Yeah.
Mr. Ford?
Certainly. Through the chair, there's actually a stormwater channel that runs north-south parallel to the property, behind the property, and they will be outletting into that existing drainage channel.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Sanderson?
Just a comment on page 55. I think it's a typo. Let's see if I get to it. Yeah, it says there's 2 5-story buildings with a total of 50 units. I think that's 60 units. So,
Okay, so that's on the applicant's report?
yeah.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that one? All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to reports, 7.1, recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment to bylaw number 2076-80 as amended, 490 Dundas Street West, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1088. Applicant owner is the Pentecostals of Quinte. Agent is Barry Johnson, RBJ Concepts Incorporated. Principal Planners Report number PP-2019-64. Resolution reads that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council. The application B-77-1088 to amend zoning bylaw number 2076-80 as amended regarding 490 Dundas Street West, City of Belleville, County of Hastings be approved as follows. That zoning bylaw 2076-80 as amended be amended by adding dwelling units as a permitted accessory use to a maximum of 8 units within the main non-residential building within the highway commercial CH11 zone. Moved by Mr. Joyce, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. Any questions or comments? See none, all in favor. Motion's carried. 7.2, update on the undertaking of a new affordable rental housing community improvement plan, CIP, update to the city's existing downtown CIP, and overall coordination of the city's 3 CIP programs, resulting in a consolidated master CIP document that will prioritize affordable rental housing. Manager Policy Planning Report number PP-2019-71. The resolution reads that report number PP-2019-71 dated October 7, 2019, regarding update on the undertaking of a new affordable rental housing community improvement plan, CIP, update of the city's existing downtown CIP, and overall coordination of the city's 3 CIP programs, resulting in a consolidated master CIP document that will prioritize affordable rental housing be received as information. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. Questions or comments? See none, Ms. Brown? You got it, got to be quick.
The definition of affordable housing, is that part and parcel of what will be included in this community improvement plan?
Yep. Mr. Ashton?
Yeah, so the definition of affordable housing sort of first sits with the official plan update. And then, so we'd have there's a couple different definitions, but that'll be defined in the official plan initially. And then that'll kind of work its way through the housing CIP.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion's carried. Number 8, information matters. 8.1, official planning zoning bylaw amendment monitoring report. Report to October 7th, 2019. A motion to receive that. Councillor Culhane, Councillor Kelly, any questions or comments to staff on that one? See none, all in favor? Motion's carried. General business and inquiries. See none. It's got some closing remarks. The Planning Advisory Committee's applicable decisions will be forwarded to City Council for consideration, forming part of the agenda for a City Council meeting to be held at a future date. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Ms. Brown, Councillor Sanderson, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Lychee. Lychee.